Welcome to another episode of Life After Corporate, my friends. And if you're new to our show, welcome home. This is where you get the straight scoop on what it really takes to start, grow, and scale a successful and sustainable service-based business. And today marks the kickoff of our series on expert community builders. Who are the leaders in building digital communities today, memberships, membership platforms. And our guest today is Cate Luzio. Cate is a dear friend. She is the founder and CEO of Luminary. You've heard me talk about Luminary before on this show. Luminary is a global professional education and networking platform addressing and impacting the systemic changes faced by women throughout their professional journeys. And I love Cate's inspiration and vision for launching Luminary. I've been a member since 2018. Was that kickoff, Cate? Welcome to Life After Corporate, by the way.
Yeah, OG, Deb, you are an OG, and I've loved watching and partnering with you and seeing how you built what you're building. And hard to believe it's been 6 years.
Hard to believe it's been 6 years. Cate was also a guest on this show on episode 19 in July of 2020. And we launched the show in February of 2020. At that point, you were talking about, remember that? Like you were talking about your North Star and staying true to your North Star. And that was in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So, right. You know, we've been through some shit together.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what originally inspired you to leave your successful corporate job. Tell everyone what you were doing before you started Luminary. And was there a specific moment in time where you had this realization that it was time to transition from corporate, time to do something different? And what led you to the idea about Luminary?
I'll start with the latter. It was not one moment in time. It really wasn't sort of a light bulb. And I didn't have this idea that I would go and build a company while I was still in my full-time role. So I spent almost 20 years in corporate and investment banking. Prior to that, spent a few years in startup tech. And before that was in nonprofit. So had built a very successful career, mainly in finance. Love what I did, and I miss it because I did love what I did, and building 4 big banks that I worked for: J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, and HSBC. But on the side of my desk, I was running our women's networks, championing, sponsoring our women's networks, heavily involved in recruitment, heavily involved in talent management, acquisition, investing in talent, mentoring. And so I don't think I would have called it building community back then, but I was building community within the businesses that I ran and more broadly in the companies that I worked for. So I was doing that organically. And then in my global role, in my last role, which was at HSBC, I had this great opportunity to work with both large companies and then small businesses, which was an interesting kind of segment for me. I'd never dealt with small business, or what we call business banking in the finance world. And I was watching all of these businesses trying to get capital, couldn't because they were too new, they were startups. And so all of this sort of came together in an event that I went to, a women's event, that wasn't as impactful that I would have liked it to be. I gave up my time. We're all very busy. And I came back from that event and said, there's got to be a better way to do this. Whether you're inside of a company, whether you're outside, whether we're trying to cross-pollinate information. And so wrote a business plan that literally started the business plan that night. Didn't know that's what it was. But 2 weeks later, I had a business plan, decided that I was going to just go all in, and did my financials, and that was it. Once I make a decision, it's very hard to change my mind. And so I gave up sort of I'm going to get off the finance wheel, hamster wheel, do this. And if it doesn't work, I can always go back.
Yeah, I think Napoleon Hill said the most successful people make decisions quickly and change their minds very slowly. Something like that. It's not verbatim, but those quick decisions are key to entrepreneurship. So I'd like to ask, what does community mean to you? And how does that definition guide the way Luminary operates today?
So I think in a nutshell, when I think of a community from growing up to, again, navigating my career to now, it's a group that breaks down barriers for one another, that helps to propel them forward without wanting something in return. It's just done organically. You will always, if you build community right, get something in return, but you've got to give, and then you can also take. And so this idea of breaking down barriers for others, for building networks and ecosystems of support, of resources that you can tap into, whether you're tapping into that every day or you're tapping into that once a year. I think that's the other misnomer about community. It's that you don't have to do it. You don't have to be a part of a community every single day. You do have to invest in that community that you're a part of. You have to nurture those relationships. But at the end of the day, we're at capacity. People are very busy, no matter what you're doing. And so I think this idea of breaking down barriers, but really you get out of it what you put into it as a member of any community. And so you've got to go into it with that mindset.
And I think that's what distinguishes community from like course platforms or communities attached to a service offering or a product. And I am a member of a lot of communities. I've built a lot of communities, and I think it's this spirit of generosity and reciprocity that makes communities really thrive. It's not about what you can take from a community. It's about what you can give to a community. And in the giving to a community and pouring into other members, you receive.
Absolutely.
And it's such a shift in mindset for so many people who, we're all addicted to the hustle at some level. And the truly effective community has that spirit. And I think you've done a fantastic job with that at Luminary. And, just from being a member to being someone who also contributes and receives, I think, I wish I were closer. I wish I could spend more time there. I definitely have FOMO because you have the most amazing relationships, the most amazing events. And we're going to get into that in a minute, but I'd like to talk about some of the biggest obstacles you faced in the early stages, like not to mention the fact that you were, 2 years in and then COVID hit, but
1 year.
1 year in. Wow. So, let's talk about the early obstacles pre-COVID and then how you pivoted during the pandemic.
Yeah, I think three biggest obstacles when we were starting. One, no one knew us, right? I think, and we were not going to go out and run a bunch of ads. Number one, I didn't know how to run ads. I'm not a social media expert. And so that just also didn't feel like me, and it didn't feel organic, and nothing against for people that run lots of ads. If that's your way to convert, great. What I realized early on was that was not going to be the way, but I still had to figure out how to get the word out. And so I used our network. I used my network. I spoke on lots of podcasts. I really, again, I feel like we built it very organically, but that was a big challenge from day one, was just making people aware of us in New York, because that's how we started physically.
Right. It was a very physical location. It was a physical place where people showed up and became members.
Yeah. Two was the differentiation in the category. We were not the same as a traditional co-working space. We were not a women's club. We've been gender inclusive since the day we launched. So really trying to I use the word convince people that we were doing something different. It's not always easy to change people's minds. And when you're so new and people don't know you, and I come from finance, that was a bit of a, how do we find our way and find our people and differentiate ourselves? And then three, I think for me personally, it was about not taking everything so personal. Somebody doesn't join, and, you're building in that very beginning. You're like, why did they join? Oh, it must be we're bad. Or someone leaves and you're like, oh, I just lost a member. And you forget, like, things happen in people's lives. And so we have done, I think, a really good job over the last 6 years of ensuring we understand what the community wants. We're crowdsourcing, as you know, so much of our topics and themes and information, as well as our speakers and our facilitators. You are one of them. The Luminary Entrepreneur Network came out of you and Ruchi and Elizabeth and Simone. So, but I had to really get over this. Every single thing, I took it personal. And that was a mindset. I think I did that as a banker as well, but it was I had an umbrella company that I was sitting under, right? You lose a client. Okay. You go find the next one. And I had to really look at it that way. Okay. I've lost a member. I just go find it. We have a big B2B model. I've got to fill that pipeline at all times. So I think those were sort of the beginning, that first year. Those were and then people obviously were the sort of the three biggest challenges. And then we were 14 months old when the pandemic hit, or 15 months old roughly. And that was like that was a slap in the face. That was a punch in the gut. That was a clothesline to the knees. That was everything all at once, because it was the business. It was people were sick. It was, we have a physical location. It was, how do I keep paying people when we're losing revenue? It was this perfect storm. But the nice thing about it was I wasn't alone. Everybody was going through some version of how it was impacting them, whether you were navigating the corporate ladder and now you've got kids and everyone's homeschooling, to I had to leave the workforce or I was laid off, to I'm a business and I'm trying to figure out how to stay in business. So I found community in that moment within my team, but also not just the Luminary community itself, but my other people reaching out and saying, how can I help you, Cate? What can we do to make sure this company stays in business?
Yeah. So what were some of the challenges? Because that's when you pivoted to digital membership, digital programming, a global community. So were there any, things that you had to adapt to from going to a very much in-person community experience at Luminary in New York City to then going global? And I think, just one thing I want to say is that you did such a great job in the very beginning in the New York early days, because everyone was coming to me. I wasn't a member yet.
Yeah.
And it was like Alyssa was coming to me saying, oh my God, Deb, you got to go to Luminary. I was running another network that was hosted by Alliance Bernstein. And, everyone was saying, oh, Deb, you got to come to Luminary. Luminary would be such a perfect place. So you did such a great job with the buzz, because it did grow organically. But then COVID hit, you went digital. What were some of the challenges in pivoting that quickly and making that decision? Hey, we're not physical anymore. We're digital and global.
Yeah. So two things. And I love the words that you're using. So I don't think we pivoted. I think we used the second word that you used. We adapted. So we were never going to just move away from the physical. We knew at some point physical would happen again. We didn't know how long. I mean, if you remember back then, it was like 2 weeks, and then it was then another month, and so we adapted. And I think because we did not have investors, it was me, we can make decisions very quickly. So great example, before New York even shut down, meaning the governor and the mayor said, okay, New York is shutting down and everyone's at home, we went online. It was Women's History Month. We had so much programming already scheduled. And I said, well, we can't not do this. This is great program. We need to be there for the community. And so we just reached out to all of those facilitators and speakers and said, would you want to do this online? Sure. Can you figure it out? Yeah, we'll get a Zoom account. And so we did. So we just quickly adapted. So we were doing online programming the week of March. I think it was March 12th. New York didn't shut down until the 22nd. My team, I had already sent home. I was the only one in space because we still had the trickling of members coming in needing a workspace, or they were trying to protect themselves. So we adapted very quickly. We also said, for however long this is online or we're online, we'll make it work. We need to be there for our community. The two kind of transformational things that happened in that moment was our because we've always had a B2B model, a number of our existing corporate partners basically reached out and said, hey, can anybody now join these programs? Not just people in our New York employee base. Sure. So we said, wait a second. Now we can have UBS and people from Tampa and London and wherever they are joining all of these. That our corporate membership exploded in that moment. The second thing was we had members that had left the New York area that were going, wait a second, I don't think I'm coming back to New York, not for the foreseeable future. Do you have a digital membership? Sure. So digital membership, just thinking those first 2 months, March and April, because no one knew what the hell was happening, we opened our programming for our community for free. We said, whether you're a member or not, we know you need this. We know you need community. Everyone's isolated. They're lonely. They don't know what the hell is happening. And then that was, again, another trigger for us for this building this digital community and membership. The third part, we had never recorded content prior to the pandemic. So everything was live. Everything was in the physical location in New York. We started recording every single session that we were doing on Zoom. Now we're building a library of content. Oh, I can go back and watch it if I missed it, or maybe I really wanted to see that session that Deb was leading about her pricing calculator for services-based businesses, and I missed it because I was homeschooling my kid. I can now go back and watch it. So all of those three things really shifted us. And I don't think if the pandemic hadn't happened, we would have been able to think about it in that way. Definitely, I know for me, I was so heads down thinking about, okay, we're in year 2. What do I got to do? This enabled us to really adapt so quickly and invest in things that probably wouldn't have happened 4 or 5 years down the road had the pandemic not occurred.
And I love so much about this because it's so relevant to what's happening in the world right now, right? So I always say fear and creativity can't exist in the same mind at the same time, right? So in order to have that clarity of vision, to notice the patterns and say, oh yeah, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. You have to have an open mind of where is the opportunity? Where's the silver lining in this cloud? And I remember, and I love times like this because it was when you had Diane von Furstenberg on stage. It was 2019, and
January.
I recorded January. Was it January 2020 or 2000?
No, 2019.
2019. And I recorded so many clips there. And I remember she said, you know, I started my business because I wanted to be the woman in charge, and I wanted to dress for the woman in charge. And that became my motto throughout 2020. Like I wore my in charge necklace on Zoom, so I could see that I was the woman in charge. And I still feel that way now. Whenever stuff is rumbling on the outside, it's your opportunity because there's many other people, many other business owners are not going to survive, or they're going to fold. They're not going to be able to handle the stress. But this is opportunity. And what you just described is how to capitalize on opportunity, no matter what is happening in the economy, in society, in government, whatever is going on, you are the woman in charge. And I love that about you, Cate, because you're such a great role model for all the members as well.
Well, just let me add that thank you. That makes me feel great, but I'm also surrounded by role models, and you're one of them, right? I look around the Luminary community, and from where we were 6 years ago, yes, maybe I was the one that walked in every day. What happens today, physically and virtually, is so many people are showing up. I mean, that's the definition of a luminary, is a role model. And now we have thousands of them around the world, you being one of them. So I also get to learn and watch and absorb and see what other people are doing. And it's such a big driver for me.
Yeah. So how has Luminary changed since those days? I know that you've grown a lot. I know you've been on road shows. I know you've made a couple of acquisitions. Take us a little bit behind the scenes into your growth strategy.
Yeah. So when I wrote that original business plan, it's funny because I go back and digital, virtual, those two words didn't even exist on my business plan because it was all about physical. We also were building the model differently because I knew I didn't want to be in every city. So we started even well before the pandemic, from day one, building our partner network. So now we've got 40 plus partner spaces around the country and abroad that our members have this reciprocal access to for a certain number of days a month. That was already in place before the pandemic for geographic sort of reach and expansion. And we continue to invest in that, and we manage that partner network, which is what we call it. But I also knew that I wasn't going to build this organically forever, especially given the fact that I self-funded the business to start, and I'm still the only shareholder to date. I knew that we could build organically. We had a B2C and a B2B model, but there were also going to be opportunities to acquire if we did it right. And so in 2020, early 2021, that was our first acquisition of a company called Declare, professional development, B2B platform, amazing, built by an incredible group of women. But pandemic was tough. And so we, through another Luminary member, we got introduced to them. We had known them, and we were able to acquire them. So that was very strategic in nature. Why? It was solely really for that B2B part of our business. And then in 2023, the crew, Tiffany Dufu, also a member of Luminary, knew her, been on the journey. We became friends, and she was looking to sell, and she was honest about it. And so we threw our hat in the ring. Again, very strategic and thinking how could it become accretive to our business. So it has become a product offering for both our B2C and our B2B businesses. And then most recently, Hey Mama, which was, again, accretive as far as bringing in another community that was already very adjacent, very synergistic to who Luminary is, thousands of working moms that we could build into the community. So I'm always thinking about how do we build more incremental offerings for our community, what's going to help our community, and then also help the business from a financial standpoint and make us bigger and hit our bigger revenue targets. So for me, that's how we've done it. And we've bolted them on, tucked in the acquisitions, which has worked. And we've gotten some great people as well through those acquisitions, and many of them still working at Luminary today. So that is my background is just thinking more strategically on if I were to add value to a client, how do I do that? My client is my community, right? So how do I add value? It's why 70% of our programming comes from our members. And that's really important for our growth. And that we do everything live versus there's nothing pre-recorded. Yes, you can get a recording, but everything is live for a reason, because both in person and digitally, you want engagement. You want people to feel like they're connected and part of the community and able to ask questions. So we do not have any of that pre-recorded. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I just know for me personally, I don't learn that way. And so there's a little bit of a selfish part there that I think this live learning is so important.
And that's what I think what's missing in the education marketplace anyway is true mentorship. You know, it's one thing to watch a video. It's another thing to be able to ask a question of the expert.
Exactly. Because you may hear something in that session and go, man, I would just love to have, raise my hand and take it a little step further, or connect with that person after the fact. And this, all of our in-person events, we really ask any of our speakers or facilitators to hang around so people get that opportunity to engage physically, and the same virtually. So it's important, because that goes back to why I said in the very beginning, breaking down barriers. In particular for women and those from underrepresented communities. But that's also one of the reasons we've always been gender inclusive, so that word inclusive, we're really walking the talk.
Yeah, you really do. Although I must admit, the bros brought a different vibe to the space.
Yeah. And I think we need some of that. I mean, I worked with men for most of my career in tech and finance. And I love that the men that are part of our physical space, but also our virtual, come with the right mindset that this is a professional community. This is a business. And we want to treat each other with respect. And also, invest in one another. So, by the way, there are people, like you said earlier, that just want to take.
Yeah.
They're not the right people for Luminary.
Yeah. Let's talk about those acquisitions, because that's something that you bring to the table from your investment banking background. And it's not something that most community builders would immediately start to think of. Explain to our listeners, what is the value in an acquisition? How do you determine what is the right company to acquire, and what is the ultimate value to Luminary?
So it can never just be about your ego. Like, I'm acquiring something that should have nothing to do with it. It should be about what is going to be accretive to the business. That's going to make your business stronger and bigger, not just from a revenue standpoint, but from a growth and hopefully profitability standpoint. Two, how is it going to benefit your customer? Or in our case, we call our customers members, both on the B2B side, so our enterprise partners, as well as our individual members. And three, what are the products and services or offerings that are going to be able to be replicated almost like a plug and play within the business. It's not going to require us going in a different lane that's not on our path. We have been approached by lots of different companies that say, hey, would you like to look at our business? And if they can't answer those three questions, then it's not the right thing for us. We've also looked at companies that we thought were right, and in the end, they were not, for lots of different reasons. But you have to take a hard look at these businesses. And again, you got to leave your ego out the door just to be able to say, I want to acquire it. Because if you acquire something and it's going to kill your team, it's going to kill your customer base, or it's going to kill your numbers, then, it's a hard way to claw back from that.
Yeah. What are some of the new challenges that you're facing now as a result of the size of the membership growing exponentially, integrating those acquisitions into the Luminary family, and expanding your team, which is amazing, by the way. I love the people that you've brought into Luminary. They're such strong leaders themselves.
I think on the team side, it's making sure everybody is still at the core of why they're here is to build a company, and how we do that through our core values. So, I'm every day, I think I've got to wake up with the best intentions to do my best every day. That's what I expect and demand of my people. But I also have to equally think about the people that I'm dealing with every single day on the member side, prospects, whoever we're talking to, that I have to believe that they're doing the same. And I think that can be a challenge because you get so in the weeds and you get so focused on your one specific job or role. You've got to pick your head up and say, okay, what's the mission here of the organization? That is in any growth organization. That's always a challenge. I think two, what's been challenging is the category. So two of our largest peers, or three, two of them being the Wing and the Riveter, who had been fast growth, raised a lot of money, respectfully 130 and 40 million. So the 170 million of capital are no longer in the category. They're no longer there. And then you've got someone like Chief that's raised close to 150 million that has had its challenges. Not to say it's not still growing, but we have to continue to invest in this category. If all of these peers leave or close, it hurts the category. And I say this often because then investors won't invest in it. People won't believe it's a viable business model. So we've got to keep focused on investing in this category and stay the course. So that's a challenge, I think, for any of us. And if you're in the physical space management, especially if you're a true co-working space, it's not easy because there are so many. And lastly, it's being able to work on the business for me versus just in the business.
Yeah.
And really carving out time every single week to think strategically versus just what's on my to-do list, and making sure that I am thinking about the business in a different way versus just what happens when you walk through our physical doors or we're on this Zoom, and making sure everybody is aligned to what we're building, both our team and our members, because they are our biggest asset. in how we continue to build and grow and scale. And maybe there's going to be a point where we're like, we've got enough members. Now it's about, new products and new offerings that we want to serve. And that's where I'm at right now.
Mm-hmm. And what is the key to member retention? Because you only get to grow your membership if you keep the members you've got.
Yeah, so I'm proud of the fact we're about a 79% retention rate.
That's crazy high in this industry.
It is. And I think that it goes to, one, we spend a lot of time with our community. It's part of the reason we're on the road with Luminary Live in 8 cities a year, especially for those who are never going to be in New York. We want to see and touch. That's why we launched last year our member meetups in cities all over the country, and now abroad. So those, again, that came out of listening to the community. So one, staying true again to what we've built. But two is really, again, that listening to the member. I think there's also a point for me where when, what do I want to do with this long term? We're 6 years old. What do the next 5 years, 10 years look like? And what does the next 5 years, 10 years look like for me? So I just know we're having tremendous amount of impact, and I want to continue to build the business. It may look a little different over the next couple of years. I've never taken capital, but I've always said never say never. And if I did, it would have to be the right kind of capital. But we're also very acquisitive and looking at lots of other, again, organizations and products that I think could be helpful to our community.
I love that. And I'm sure you can't share more at this stage, but any parting words for our listeners? Communities are hot right now. Memberships are hot. Everyone underestimates what it takes to build that culture of community. I think it's a cultural issue. As someone, speaking for myself, launching a digital membership last December and having, a really great handful of initial members, I'm sitting here thinking, oh, well, what is the secret sauce? How do you get past those initial stages and really make your membership start to live and thrive and grow on its own? What are some of those key takeaways that you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
At the end of the day, you've got to survive financially. So when people say, well, I just want to build an amazing community, it doesn't matter about the money. No. It should matter about the money. Because you got to pay people, you got to pay yourself. You didn't go into business to be in debt. So it is about the money. And I spend a lot of money, because I have a 25,000 square foot physical space in New York City. So I know what my bills are every month, and I know how much I pay my people. So I know that retention for B2C as well as B2B is a really important metrics for me, to continue to build. But it can't just be about the revenue and the profitability of the company, because then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. I think they go hand in hand. And if you do it, again, authentically, organically, and with the right core values, impact, propelling one another forward, investing in the next generation, all of those things, then they will come. But it is hard. If people come to me all the time and they're like, I'm starting a new membership, I'm like, okay, here, it's not as easy as you think. And you may get to a point where that's it. And is that enough? Is that okay? But what goes into talking to those members every day? How are you engaging them on a regular basis? What kind of content engages them? Even when someone decides to end their membership, the exit poll that we do is like, why? We want to know why, because that helps us get better. 78, I think, or 82%, something like that, says they would recommend Luminary to another person, even if they're leaving Luminary. The number one reason people leave Luminary is because of financial hardship. It's not because they're not getting value. It's because things have changed in their life. So I think there's something to that. And I think because we've built such a flexible membership from, digital to in person, people feel like we're thinking about them and what's going on in their lives. And you know what? We are. That's why we've created the tiers of membership that we have, and our fellowship program and our scholarship program. That's not just doesn't happen. That is all by design.
Yeah,
So if you're building a community, do it for the right reasons, but also be methodical and strategic as you're building it, and take feedback over and over along the way from the community that stays with you, as well as those that don't stay with you.
Great, great, great advice. And I love the flexibility with Luminary. And it's unusual in this business model to have that level of flexibility and affordability for members. So that's beautiful. I've got dozens of other questions, but we'll have to save them for another day. Thank you so much, Cate. If people are interested in becoming a member of Luminary, where do they go? What's the best place to start?
Sure. Our website is weareluminary.com, and our Instagram is the same, We Are Luminary. So follow us. We may be coming to a city near you for our Luminary Live or a member meetup, and just engage, reach out. If you're looking to host an event, we've also got an amazing rooftop called the Glass Ceiling. And our members are our biggest advocates. You are one of those, Deb. You are one of our biggest ambassadors and advocates. And just like you, when you found out about Luminary those 6 years ago, those same people that recommended you are still a part of this community. And I'm so proud of that.
Yeah, such a beautiful place, wonderful business model, and a brilliant leader. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with our listeners here today, Cate. And this is the first in our series about secrets from great community builders. So keep tuned to this channel, more to come. Come take a seat at our table, which is the motto for Luminary. So weareluminary.com. Join us. And I look forward to seeing you on the inside, my friends. Take care till next time.
Thanks, Deb.
Thank you, Cate.